My husband showed up to my paralysis diagnosis with his girlfriend and humiliated me in front of the entire hospital, saying I was too ghetto and dramatic to handle being disabled with dignity. 6 months later, when he needed me most, I showed him exactly what dignity looked like. The appointment was at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, October 17th. I remember, because it was the day my entire life changed, and not just because of the diagnosis. I'd been having symptoms for 6 months. Numbness in my left leg that spread, tingling in my hands, weakness, fatigue so profound I'd fall asleep at my desk. At first, I thought it was stress. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, top performer in my region, always on the go. Maybe I was just pushing too hard. But then I dropped a coffee mug and couldn't feel it slip from my fingers, watched it shatter on the kitchen floor, and realized my hand had just stopped working. That's when I knew something was really wrong. The MRI was 2 weeks ago. Today I was getting the results, and I was terrified. I'd asked David, my husband of 15 years, to come with me. He'd said yes, of course he'd be there. He knew how scared I was, how the waiting had been eating me alive. I sat in Dr. Patel's office at Emory Hospital, my hands shaking, checking my phone. David was late. 20 minutes late, then 30. Dr. Patel came in, chart in hand, that look on his face. The look doctors get when they're about to deliver bad news. Mrs. Harrison, I want to discuss your MRI results. Can we wait for my husband? He should be here any minute. Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. We waited another 15 minutes. Finally, my phone buzzed. David, almost there, got held up, coming from the office. The office was 10 minutes away. He'd been almost there for 45 minutes. Let's just start, I said, my voice small. He'll catch up. Dr. Patel pulled up images on his screen. My brain, my spine, white spots everywhere. Lesions, he called them. Nia, you have multiple sclerosis, MS. Your immune system is attacking the protective covering of your nerves. The room tilted. MS. I'd heard of it, seen the commercials, but I didn't really know what it meant. What does that? How bad is it? You have the progressive type, which means it will likely worsen over time. Right now, you're in the early stages, but given the number and location of lesions, I expect you'll need mobility aids within a year. A cane, possibly a walker. Within 5 years, you'll likely need a wheelchair. A wheelchair. At 40 years old. I was 40 years old. Can you stop it? Slow it down? We have medications that can help manage symptoms and potentially slow progression. But Nia, I need you to understand. This is a chronic degenerative condition. It will affect your quality of life, your ability to work, your daily functioning. I started crying. Not pretty crying. Ugly, gasping sobs. The kind that come from your soul when your entire future has just been rewritten. That's when the door opened. David walked in. Finally. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. Asian. Younger than me. Maybe 32. Beautiful. In that effortless way. Wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hand was on David's arm. I stared through my tears, confused. Sorry we're late, David said, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was terrible. Nia, this is Susan. Susan Chen, my colleague from work. I hope you don't mind, but I asked her to come for support. Dr. Patel looked as confused as I felt. Mr. Harrison, perhaps your wife would prefer privacy for this conversation? No, Susan can stay, David said, sitting down. He didn't sit next to me. He sat next to her. She's actually a doctor too, pediatrician. She might have valuable insights. Susan smiled at me, sympathetic, pitying. I'm so sorry you're going through this, Nia. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. My brain was trying to handle too many things at once. MS diagnosis. My husband bringing another woman to my appointment. The way his hand casually touched her back as she sat down. Dr. Patel cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. As I was explaining to Mrs. Harrison, she has multiple sclerosis, progressive type. We're looking at significant mobility loss over the next several years. I turned to David, reaching for his hand, needing him, needing my husband. David, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. How will I work? How will I? He pulled his hand away. Nia, you need to calm down. This dramatic reaction is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always so emotional about everything. I blinked. Dramatic? David, I just found out I'm going to be paralyzed. Eventually paralyzed. Not right now. You're acting like you're dying. Susan deals with sick kids and their parents every day. Some of them have actual terminal illnesses. This is manageable. Patel's jaw tightened. Mr. Harrison, your wife has just received life-altering news. Her emotional response is completely appropriate. David waved him off. You don't know her like I do. Everything is a production with Nia. Everything is drama. Now this disease is going to be her excuse to be even more needy, more dependent, more. He trailed off, but I heard the word he didn't say. The word he'd been using more and more lately. More what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed. More too much, too loud, too emotional, too... You know what I mean, Nia. How are you going to handle being disabled when you can't even handle regular life with grace and dignity? The words hit like a physical blow. I looked at Susan. She was looking at her lap, embarrassed. Even she knew what David was really saying. Too ghetto. That's what he meant. Too black. Too urban. Too much of everything he'd been trying to polish out of me for the past year. I think you both need to leave, Dr. Patel said, his voice hard. Mrs. Harrison needs time to process this diagnosis without additional stress. We were just leaving anyway, David said, standing. We have dinner reservations. Nia, I'll see you at home later. Try to get yourself together. He walked out. Susan followed, touching his arm again. That intimate touch, the one that said she'd touched him 1,000 times before. I sat there, alone with Dr. Patel, crying harder now. Not just about the MS, about everything. Mrs. Harrison, Dr. Patel said gently. I need to ask, is everything okay at home? Is your husband supportive? I wanted to lie, wanted to say yes, everything's fine, but instead I shook my head. I don't think he is anymore. Dr. Patel gave me a prescription for medications to manage symptoms. Pamphlets about MS support groups. His direct number, in case you need anything. I think he knew what I was too afraid to admit. My husband was leaving me, and he'd brought his replacement to watch. I drove home in a fog. Couldn't remember the route, couldn't remember parking. Just found myself sitting in my driveway, staring at our house. The house we'd bought 12 years ago. The house where we'd planned to grow old together. Except now, I'd be growing old alone. And disabled. And apparently too ghetto to handle it with the dignity David required. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Tamika. How'd it go? What did the doctor say? I called her. Didn't even say hello before I broke down completely. Nia? Baby, what happened? I have MS, multiple sclerosis. I'm gonna need a wheelchair eventually. And David, Tamika, he brought her. He brought his mistress to my diagnosis appointment. He what? I told her everything. The appointment, Susan, the things he said, the way he looked at me with disgust. That motherfucker, Tamika whispered. Nia, where are you? Home, in the driveway. I can't go inside, can't face the emptiness. I'm coming over. Don't move. I'm leaving work right now. She was there in 20 minutes. Found me still sitting in my car, crying, unable to move. She got in the passenger seat, pulled me into her arms, and let me fall apart. I'm going to be paralyzed, Tam, 40 years old, and I'm going to be in a wheelchair. How am I going to live? How am I going to work? What man is going to want me now? First of all, we don't know what man is going to want you, because the man you have damn sure doesn't deserve you. Second, you're going to live the same way you've always lived, fiercely, beautifully, on your own terms. He called me too dramatic, said I can't handle being disabled with dignity. Tamika pulled back, looked me in the eyes. What he meant was you're too black for his new corporate friends, too real, too yourself. And now that you're going to need help, he's running, because he's a coward who wants a Stepford wife who makes him look good at company dinners. She wasn't wrong. Over the past year since David's promotion to VP at his tech company, things had changed. He'd started making comments. Small ones at first. "Can you not talk so loud at these work events? It's a little much. Maybe you could straighten your hair for the gala. It looks more professional. Do you have to laugh like that? It's kind of aggressive." Code switching, respectability politics. All the things black people do to make white people comfortable. David had been demanding I do it constantly. Erase the parts of myself that reminded people where I came from. Decatur, a black neighborhood. A single mama who worked 2 jobs to raise me. And now, with MS, I was going to be visibly disabled. Another thing that would make his new colleagues uncomfortable. Another thing that would remind them he wasn't one of them. So, he'd found Susan, Dr. Susan Chen. Perfect, polished, quiet, Asian, and therefore acceptably exotic without being too black. "I need to go inside," I said finally. "Face it. Figure out what I'm going to do." Tamika came with me. The house was empty. Dark. David hadn't come home yet, was probably at dinner with Susan. Probably hadn't thought about me once since leaving the hospital. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt foreign, like a museum of a life that was already over. In the bedroom, I noticed immediately, David's stuff was gone from the bathroom. His toothbrush, his cologne, half his clothes missing from the closet. "He's already moving out," I whispered. He knew before today what the diagnosis would be, and he was already leaving. Tamika found a note on the kitchen counter, handed it to me. "Nia, staying at a friend's place for a while. We need to talk about our future. D. Our future." He meant the lack of one. I sat on the couch, Tamika beside me, and something shifted inside me. The crying stopped. The fear crystallized into something else. Clarity. "He thinks I'm going to fall apart," I said. "He thinks I'm going to be a victim. Too dramatic and too ghetto to handle this with dignity. What are you going to do?" I looked at her. "I'm going to prove him right. I'm going to be dramatic as hell. But not the way he thinks. I'm going to dramatically destroy his entire life." Tamika smiled, slow and dangerous. "That's my girl. Tell me what you need." "I need a lawyer, a PI. And I need to know everything about him and Susan. Everything. Consider it done." Over the next few days, while I tried to process having MS and started medications that made me nauseous, Tamika worked her network. Within a week, I had a team. But I didn't know yet what I'd discover. Didn't know that David's betrayal went so much deeper than an affair. Didn't know that while I was learning to walk with a cane, he was committing felonies using my medical condition as cover. All I knew that first night was this. I had multiple sclerosis. My body was going to fail me. But my mind was sharp. My will was iron, and David Harrison had made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd underestimated me. Thought being disabled made me weak. Thought calling me too ghetto would make me accept less. Instead, it made me dangerous. And he had no idea what was coming. 2 months after my diagnosis, I could barely recognize my life or my body. The MS was progressing faster than Dr. Patel expected. My left leg dragged when I walked now. My hands trembled so badly some mornings, I couldn't button my own shirt. The fatigue was crushing. I'd sleep 10 hours and wake up exhausted. I'd started using a cane. Hated it. Hated the looks people gave me. Hated how David looked at it with barely concealed disgust the few times he was actually home, which wasn't often. He'd officially moved into the guest room, so your nighttime symptoms don't disturb my sleep. Translation? So he didn't have to see me struggle. Didn't have to watch me drop things or stumble or cry from the pain. He was home maybe 2 nights a week. Always working late. Always with meetings that ran long. Always unavailable. When he was home, the cruelty came in small, precise cuts. I'd drop a glass. He'd sigh loudly. Again? I'd take longer getting ready. He'd check his watch pointedly. We're going to be late. You're moving like an old woman. I'd mention my doctor appointment. He'd barely look up from his phone. Can't you handle that yourself? One night, I overheard him on the phone in his office. I'd gotten up for water, my cane tapping against the hardwood, and his door was cracked open. She's getting worse. Fast. More reason for us to move forward with our plans. No, I'm not worried about looking bad. I'm not going to sacrifice my life to be a caretaker for someone who was already too much when she was healthy. Yes, baby, I know. Just a few more weeks. Let me get things arranged. I stood there in the dark hallway, listening to my husband plan his escape from our marriage like it was a business deal. The next morning, I called Tamika. I need that lawyer, now. Already got you an appointment. Regina Morrison, my sister. She specializes in divorce, but also healthcare law. You're going to love her. Regina was everything I needed. A black woman in her late 40s, natural locks, sharp suit, sharper mind. Tell me everything, she said. I did. The diagnosis, David bringing Susan, the affair, the cruelty, the planning to leave. I want to document everything before I file, I said. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Smart. We need a private investigator, too. I know someone. Within a week, I had Marcus Jenkins working my case. Former cop, now a PI who specialized in infidelity and financial investigations. Give me 2 weeks, he said. I'll find out everything. Meanwhile, I was living in my failing body and dying marriage, pretending I didn't know what was coming. Then I found something that changed everything. I was going through our insurance paperwork. My MS medications were expensive. I needed to understand our coverage. That's when I noticed something odd. Our health insurance beneficiary had been changed from me to Susan Chen. My hands were shaking as I dug deeper into the paperwork. Started looking at explanation of benefits statements, prescriptions in my name, medications I'd never heard of, dozens of them over the past 6 months, pain medications, anxiety medications, sleep aids, all prescribed by Dr. Susan Chen, all picked up from pharmacies I'd never been to, all under my insurance. I called my insurance company. These prescriptions, can you tell me which pharmacy filled them? The rep read off addresses, 3 different pharmacies all across town. None I'd ever visited. And the signature on file for pickup? Nia Harrison, that's you, correct? Can you email me copies of the signatures? When they came through, I stared at my computer screen. The signatures looked like mine, but I'd never signed them, never picked up these medications, didn't even know what half of them were for. I took screenshots of everything. Then I did something my pharmaceutical sales background had taught me. I looked up the medications. Oxycodone, Adderall, Xanax, Ambien, high-dose, expensive formulations. Over $50,000 worth of controlled substances prescribed in my name over 6 months. My husband and his girlfriend, doctor, were using my insurance and my identity to obtain prescription drugs I never received. That was fraud, federal fraud, and possibly drug trafficking. I called Regina immediately. They're not just having an affair, they're committing felonies. Regina was quiet for a long moment. Forward me everything, every document, every screenshot. Don't confront them. Don't let them know you know. This just became a criminal case. Marcus, the PI, came back with his report 3 days later. We met at Tamika's house. I didn't trust my own home anymore. Your husband has been moving money for 8 months, Marcus said, spreading papers across the dining table. He set up 3 separate accounts you don't have access to. Transferred roughly $85,000 from your joint accounts into accounts with only his name. He's been paying for an apartment in Buckhead, $3,200 a month, lease in both his and Susan Chen's names. They're living together? Part-time. He stays there most nights now. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus pulled out more papers. I tracked the pharmacy pickups. The prescriptions in your name? They're not picking them up personally. There's a pharmacy tech named Brandon Mills who's been releasing the medications without proper ID verification. He's in on it. Why would they do this? David makes good money. Susan has student loans, Over $300,000. Medical school debt. And your husband has been living way beyond his means. The apartment, expensive dinners, a new car he bought Susan last month, BMW. Paid cash. They needed money. Your insurance gave them access to expensive medications they could sell. I felt sick. They were using my disability to commit crimes. Yes, and there's more. Marcus hesitated. Your husband has been telling people at his company that you're the one having an affair, that he's staying with you out of duty despite your betrayal. He's been positioning himself as the victim. The room spun. What? He told HR you've been unstable and making false accusations about him. He's creating a paper trail that makes you look like the problem. So when he files for divorce, he looks like the long-suffering husband who tried everything. Tamika grabbed my hand. That manipulative motherfucker. Regina was making notes, her face grim. This is good. I mean, it's horrible, but legally, this is very good. We have evidence of fraud, prescription fraud, possible drug trafficking, financial abuse, and defamation. Nia, when we move on this, we're not just filing for divorce. We're filing criminal complaints with the FBI and state medical board. Both of them? My voice was small. Susan, too? She prescribed the medications. She knew they were fraudulent. She's more culpable than your husband. She violated her medical license. She'll lose it permanently and face felony charges. Over the next month, I watched my body deteriorate while I built my case. I was using a walker now on bad days, had to take disability leave from work, couldn't do sales calls when I could barely walk. David used this against me. See, you're becoming a burden everywhere. Even your job doesn't want you. I just nodded. Let him think I was defeated. Let him think I was too sick, too weak, too dramatic to fight back. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Recording our conversations when I legally could, photographing his absences, saving every cruel text message. I also started seeing Dr. Amara King, a therapist who specialized in chronic illness and trauma. Your husband's behavior constitutes emotional abuse, she told me in our third session. The way he's treating you during a medical crisis is psychological cruelty, and it's likely making your MS symptoms worse. Stress is a known trigger for MS flares. Can you document that? Absolutely. For legal purposes, I can provide a statement that his behavior is directly impacting your health. 3 months after my diagnosis, David finally said what we both knew was coming. He came home on a Tuesday night, found me on the couch with my walker nearby, and sat down across from me. Not next to me, across. Like I was a business meeting. Nia, we need to talk. I want a divorce. I'd been expecting this. But hearing the words still hurt. Why? He laughed. Actually laughed. Why? Nia, look at yourself. You can barely walk. You're going to need full-time care soon. I can't do this. I can't be tied to someone who's going to be completely dependent. I have a life I want to live. With Susan. Yes, with Susan. She's everything you're not. Graceful, calm, refined. She doesn't make everything about race. She handles stress with dignity. There was that word again. Dignity. I brought you papers. He pulled out a folder. My lawyer drew them up. You get the house. I'm being generous there. Minimal alimony since you're not working anyway and you'll be on disability. You keep your medical bills. Sign these and we can make this quick and painless. I took the papers, read through them slowly. He'd thought of everything. I'd get the house, but have to refinance in my name only. Impossible with no job. Alimony of $1,500 a month. Not enough to live on. And I'd be responsible for all my medical expenses, which were already over $3,000 monthly. This isn't fair, David. Fair? What's not fair is me having to sacrifice my future for someone who's going to be a burden. Sign the papers, Nia. You have 1 week. Then I'm filing anyway. He stood up to leave. Where are you going? To Susan's. I've been staying there mostly anyway. Oh, and Nia? You might want to start thinking about where you'll go when you have to sell the house. Maybe your mother can take you in. He walked out, didn't look back, left me sitting there with divorce papers that would leave me disabled, broke and homeless. I waited until I heard his car pull away. Then I called Regina. He just gave me his divorce terms. And they're insulting, cruel, designed to leave me with nothing. Perfect. Now we know exactly who he is. Forward me the documents. Tomorrow we file first. And Nia? We're not just filing for divorce. I know. We're ending him. Completely. That night I slept better than I had in months. Because tomorrow, David Harrison would find out what dignity really looked like. And it looked like justice. The day I destroyed David Harrison's life started at 9:47 a.m. on a Thursday. I know the exact time because that's when Marcus, my PI, texted me. He's at the Midtown office, meeting with the development team, maximum visibility. It's time. I was sitting in Regina's law office with Tamika beside me. My walker was folded next to my chair. I'd had a bad morning. My legs weren't cooperating. My hands shook so badly I'd spilled coffee on myself. But my mind was crystal clear. "Are you ready?" Regina asked. I nodded. "Let's do it." She made 3 phone calls. That's all it took to set everything in motion. The first call was to the process server. "He's at 1200 Peachtree Street, 14th floor. Serve him now." The second was to the FBI field office. "The evidence package we discussed is being delivered now. Subjects are David Harrison and Dr. Susan Chen. Healthcare fraud, prescription fraud, and drug trafficking." The third was to the Georgia Composite Medical Board. "Dr. Susan Chen's license needs immediate suspension. Criminal investigation is active." Then we waited. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Marcus, it's happening. Sending you video." The video was from across the street, zoomed in on the building's lobby. I watched David walk out, talking to 2 men in suits, potential investors he'd been courting for weeks. He was animated, confident, the picture of success in his custom suit. Then the process server approached. "David Harrison?" David turned, annoyed at the interruption. "Yes, you've been served." He took the envelope, confused, opened it right there on the sidewalk while his investors watched. I wish I could have seen his face the moment he read. "Petition for divorce with attached evidence. Photos of him and Susan entering their Buckhead apartment. Bank statements showing the money he'd hidden. Most devastating, copies of the fraudulent prescriptions with Susan's signature and his pharmacy pickup records." His investors stepped back, uncomfortable. Before David could process what was happening, 2 more people approached. A man and a woman, both in dark suits, badges visible. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Special Agent Chen with the FBI. You're under arrest for healthcare fraud and conspiracy to commit prescription drug fraud." The video captured everything. David's face going white, his mouth opening and closing. "What? No, this is a mistake. This is—" "You have the right to remain silent." They put handcuffs on him, right there, on Peachtree Street in Midtown Atlanta during lunch hour. His investors were filming on their phones. People on the sidewalk stopped to watch. "Nia did this." David screamed as they walked him to their car. "My crazy wife, she's sick in the head. The MS affected her brain. This is all lies." "Sir, stop talking," Agent Chen said. But David couldn't stop. "She's making this up because I want a divorce. Because I don't want to be stuck with a cripple. This is revenge." Every word was caught on video. Every word would be used against him. They put it in the car, drove away. Marcus sent another text. "Susan Chen arrested at her pediatric practice 10 minutes ago, in front of staff and patients. Medical board already there to suspend her license." Regina's phone rang. She answered, listened, smiled coldly. "Thank you for confirming." She hung up. David's company just put him on immediate administrative leave. His access to the building has been revoked. My phone started ringing. David, from the police station. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 3 minutes of screaming. Threats. Accusations. "You vindictive bitch. You set me up. I'm going to destroy you. You're going to pay for this." This is because I don't want to be married to a cripple. I saved it. forwarded it to Regina. "That's evidence of harassment and ableist discrimination," she said. "Keep them coming." By that evening, it was all over the news. Local stations led with it. Tech VP and doctor arrested in prescription fraud scheme. The story had everything. A respected professional, his doctor girlfriend, a sick wife whose identity they used to traffic drugs. The media loved it. Channel 2 got David's arrest video. It went viral. By midnight, it had 300,000 views. Comments were brutal. He really said he didn't want to be stuck with a cripple while getting arrested for fraud? Trash. Using his disabled wife's insurance to commit crimes, then abandoning her? I hope he never gets out. The way he's screaming about his crazy sick wife? This man is evil. The next morning, more dominoes fell. David's company launched an internal investigation, standard procedure when an executive is arrested. What they found made the fraud charges look small. He'd been embezzling for over a year, falsifying expense reports, creating fake vendor invoices, authorizing payments to shell companies he controlled. Over $200,000 stolen from his employer. They fired him immediately and filed their own criminal complaint. Susan lost her medical license that same day. Not suspended, revoked. The medical board statement was scathing. Dr. Chen violated her oath, abused her prescription authority, and endangered public safety for personal gain. Her pediatric practice fired her, released a statement. "We are horrified and had no knowledge of Dr. Chen's criminal activity." Her malpractice insurance dropped her. She'd never practice medicine again. But I wasn't done. Regina filed the divorce petition publicly. Georgia divorce records are public, and this one was explosive. It included everything. Evidence of the affair, the fraudulent prescriptions, David's emotional abuse documented by my therapist, his text messages calling me a burden, the recording of him telling his investors he didn't want to be stuck with a cripple. Most damaging, Marcus Jr.'s, wrong story. Most damaging, Dr. King's medical opinion that David's psychological abuse and abandonment during his wife's medical crisis directly contributed to the worsening of her MS symptoms. The media picked it up immediately. By that evening, I was getting calls from reporters. "Mrs. Harrison, would you like to comment on your husband's arrest?" I gave one statement, carefully written by Regina. "I am a 40-year-old black woman with multiple sclerosis." When I received my diagnosis, my husband brought his mistress to the appointment and told me I was too dramatic and too ghetto to handle disability with dignity. While I was learning to walk with a cane, he and his girlfriend were committing felonies using my medical condition as cover. I will not be silenced. I will not be ashamed. And I will not let anyone use my disability to victimize me. That statement went everywhere. Morning shows, cable news, social media. Suddenly, I wasn't just David Harrison's sick wife. I was Mia Harrison, disability advocate, speaking out about ableism and abuse. The support was overwhelming. Women with disabilities reached out by the hundreds. "Thank you for speaking up. Your strength gave me courage. I'm leaving my abusive partner because of you." But David was falling apart. His mother called me crying. "Nia, baby, I don't understand. What happened to my son? The man who did this." "That's not the man I raised." "Mrs. Harrison, your son has been ashamed of being black for years. Ashamed of where he came from. When I got sick, I became another thing he was ashamed of. A disabled black wife didn't fit his new corporate image." She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm so sorry. For everything he put you through, you deserved better." "Thank you for saying that. And Nia, I hope you take him for everything. Because he deserves it." Kate, David's lawyer, tried to negotiate. Called Regina with an offer. David would agree to generous alimony if I dropped the criminal complaints. Regina laughed. "Tell your client that Mrs. Harrison doesn't control federal prosecutors. The FBI isn't dropping charges because he's willing to pay alimony. Also, we're not negotiating. We're taking everything in the divorce, and he's going to prison. Those are his options. Prot. The lawyer called back an hour later. My client wants to speak to Mrs. Harrison directly. Absolutely not, Regina said. All communication goes through me. But David found a way. He had his mother call me, put him on three-way from jail. Nia, please, we need to talk. We have nothing to discuss. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for everything. For Susan, for what I said at your diagnosis, for all of it. Can't we work this out? Work what out, David? You committed multiple felonies using my disability as cover. You emotionally abused me during a medical crisis. You tried to leave me with nothing. What exactly is there to work out? The criminal charges. If you tell the FBI you were aware of the prescriptions, that you consented? I laughed, cold, hard. You want me to lie to federal investigators and implicate myself in your crimes? That's your strategy? Nia, I'm facing 10 years. Susan's facing 8. We made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to abandon your sick wife. Those weren't mistakes. Those were who you really are. Please, I'm begging you. You know what I was begging you for? Support, compassion, basic human decency when I found out I was going to be paralyzed. You brought your mistress instead. So no, David, I'm not helping you. I'm watching you face consequences. I hung up. His mother called back. That was hard for him, Nia. He's really suffering. Mrs. Harrison, with all due respect, I'm suffering too. I have an incurable disease. My body is failing. And while I was trying to cope with that, my husband was abusing me and committing crimes. David's suffering is self-inflicted. Mine isn't. She didn't call again after that. The trial was set for 6 months out. But before then, more devastation. David's fraternity brothers released a statement distancing themselves from him. His college removed his name from their donor wall. He'd given $50,000 2 years ago, money he'd apparently embezzled. His father, who'd been defending him, finally saw the evidence, called me personally. Nia, I owe you an apology. I didn't want to believe my son could do something like this. But I've seen the evidence now. The prescriptions, the abuse, everything. I'm ashamed. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I hope you know you were always good enough. Better than good enough. My son was the one who wasn't enough, not you. 3 months after the arrests, David took a plea deal. 8 years in federal prison for fraud. 3 additional years for embezzlement, to run concurrently. Susan took a deal too. 6 years, loss of medical license permanently. At David's sentencing, I attended. Regina said I didn't have to, but I wanted to be there. David was let in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He'd lost weight, looked older, broken. The judge was a black woman in her 60s, Judge Andrea Williams. She read through the case file, her expression growing harder. Mr. Harrison, I've been on this bench for 20 years. I've seen a lot of fraud cases, but using your disabled wife's identity to commit crimes while emotionally abusing her, that's a special kind of cruelty. Your Honor, I was under a lot of stress. Do not speak unless I ask you a question, she snapped. You had a wife with a devastating diagnosis who needed support. Instead, you brought your mistress to her doctor's appointment and told her she was too ghetto to handle disability with dignity. Those were your words, correct? David looked at his lawyer. No escape. Yes, Your Honor. And then you used her medical condition, the very thing you mocked her for, to commit federal crimes. You forged her signature. You used her insurance. You destroyed her sense of safety during the most vulnerable time of her life. I made mistakes. These weren't mistakes. This was calculated abuse. You saw your wife's disability as both an embarrassment and an opportunity. An opportunity to commit crimes, and an embarrassment you wanted to escape. She sentenced him to the maximum. 8 years, no early release possibility. As they led him away, David looked at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I didn't look away. Didn't cry. Didn't react. I just watched him disappear through the door that would hold him for the next 8 years. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mrs. Harrison, how do you feel about your ex-husband's sentence?" I feel like justice was served, not just for me, but for every person with a disability who's been abused, abandoned, or taken advantage of by someone who was supposed to love them. "What's next for you?" I smiled. For the first time in months, a real smile, building something beautiful. 2 years after David's sentencing, I sat backstage at the Georgia World Congress Center, waiting to give the keynote address at the National MS Society's annual conference. My wheelchair was positioned near the curtain. I'd graduated from walker to wheelchair 6 months ago. My disease had progressed faster than anyone expected. But I wasn't the broken woman David had predicted. I was something else entirely. "5 minutes, Miss Harrison," this stage manager said. My phone buzzed. A text from Tamika. "You've got this, sis. About to watch the live stream with your mama. She's already crying, and you haven't even started." Another from Marcus, my fiancé. "I'm in the 3rd row, baby. So proud of you. Can't wait to marry you next month." Marcus. I smiled thinking about him. We'd met 18 months ago at a disability advocacy training. He was an occupational therapist who'd lost his leg in a car accident at 25. Now 43, he'd built a practice helping people adapt to mobility challenges. Our first conversation, he'd rolled up in his own wheelchair. He used one on days when his prosthetic was uncomfortable, and said, "I hear you're the woman who sent her criminal husband to prison and started a revolution." I'm Marcus. Want to grab coffee and talk about dismantling ableism? I'd laughed, really laughed, for the first time since my diagnosis. We'd been inseparable since. He proposed 6 months ago at the opening of our 3rd Dignified Disability Center. "Miss Harrison," the stage manager again, "you're on." Dr. Leslie Grant, the conference organizer, was introducing me. Our keynote speaker today is a woman who transformed personal trauma into systemic change. When Nia Harrison was diagnosed with MS, her husband brought his mistress to the appointment and told her she was too ghetto to handle disability with dignity. Instead of accepting that abuse, she exposed his crimes, sent him to prison, and built an organization that has helped over 800 disabled people of color fight discrimination and abuse. Please welcome Nia Harrison. The applause was thunderous. I rolled onto that stage, positioned myself at the accessible podium, and looked out at 3,000 people. Disabled people, caregivers, medical professionals, advocates, my people. 2 years ago, I began, my voice steady and clear. My husband told me I was too ghetto and too dramatic to handle being disabled with dignity. He brought his girlfriend to my MS diagnosis and made me feel like my disability was a character flaw, like being paralyzed was something I should be ashamed of. You could hear people shifting in their seats, some crying already. I believed him for about 5 minutes. Then I remembered who I was. I remembered that dignity isn't about walking. It's about standing up for yourself, even when you can't stand at all. I shared my story then, the diagnosis, the betrayal, the fraud, the systematic destruction of a man who thought my disability made me weak. But here's what David never understood. My disability didn't diminish me, it clarified me. It showed me who really loved me and who was performing love. It revealed who had integrity and who was a criminal. It gave me purpose. I talked about Dignified Disability, the nonprofit I'd started with my divorce settlement, and the restitution I'd won. We provide free legal services for disabled people facing discrimination. We offer financial planning and benefits navigation. We have support groups specifically for disabled Black women and people of color, because we face unique challenges at the intersection of ableism and racism. The applause started again. We served 847 people in 2 years. We've helped 63 people keep their jobs after disability discrimination. We've helped 91 people leave abusive relationships where their disability was being used against them. We've provided therapy to 156 people dealing with the trauma of being abandoned or abused because of their disability. I pulled up a slide, faces of people we'd helped. This is Marcus, not my fiancé. Different Marcus, who was denied a promotion because his employer said his wheelchair made him unprofessional. We sued. He won, got the promotion and $200,000 in damages. This is Jennifer, who has lupus. Her husband told her she was too sick to deserve love and isolated her from everyone. We helped her escape, get divorced, and rebuild her life. This is David, yes, another David, who has cerebral palsy. His family was stealing his disability checks. We helped him get legal guardianship transferred and prosecute his relatives for financial abuse. Every face on the screen represented a victory, a life saved, a person who'd been told they were too much, too broken, too disabled, and learned they were enough. The world tells disabled people, especially disabled Black people, that we should be grateful for scraps. Grateful for any relationship, even abusive ones. Grateful for any job, even exploitative ones. Grateful to exist at all? I refuse. I refuse to be grateful for abuse. I refuse to shrink myself to make abled people comfortable. I refuse to believe that my wheelchair makes me less worthy of love, respect, and dignity. The standing ovation started before I even finished. People in wheelchairs, on crutches, with canes, with service animals, all standing or sitting tall, applauding. I waited for it to quiet. David is in prison. He'll be there for 6 more years. His doctor girlfriend lost her medical license and her freedom. They lost everything while trying to take everything from me. But I didn't win because I destroyed them. I won because I became more than they said I could be. I gestured to the screen behind me, photos of me at center openings, speaking at conferences, meeting with legislators. This is dignity, not walking, not being brave or inspirational just for existing while disabled, but fighting, advocating, refusing to accept less than we deserve. That's dignity. After the speech, the networking session was overwhelming. People lined up to talk to me, to share their stories, to ask how they could get help from dignified disability. A young woman, maybe 25, in a wheelchair approached. "Miss Harrison, I just left my boyfriend. He told me I was too disabled to ever find someone better. Your story gave me the courage to go. What's your name?" "Ashley." "Ashley, you did the bravest thing. And you're going to be okay. Better than okay. Here's my card. Call our hotline. We'll connect you with resources." An older Black man using a walker. "My son has been trying to get me declared incompetent so he can control my finances. I heard your speech and realized that's what your husband tried to do to you. Make you seem crazy so he could take everything." "That's exactly right. We can help you. We have lawyers who specialize in this." Story after story, person after person, all of them carrying trauma from being disabled in an ableist world. But the most surprising visitor came an hour into the networking session. A woman approached hesitantly. Asian, mid-30s, familiar. Susan Chen. She looked different, older, thinner, defeated. She'd been released from prison 3 months ago after serving 4 years, early release for good behavior. "Nia, Mrs. Harrison, I don't expect you to talk to me, but I needed to come, to say I'm sorry, face to face. Security moved toward us, but I waved them off. Why are you here, Susan?" "Because I was watching your speech online, from my apartment. I don't leave much, I'm too ashamed, and I realized everything you said about people using disability to abuse and exploit. I did that. I used your MS to commit crimes. I stood by while David abused you. I was complicit in everything." "Yes, you were. I can't practice medicine anymore. I'll never be a doctor again. I work at a pharmacy now, not as a pharmacist, just retail. I lost everything, and I deserve to lose it. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. You deserved a doctor who advocated for you, not one who committed crimes against you. You deserved a husband who supported you, not one who mocked you. And I helped take that from you. Tears streamed down her face. I can't undo it, but I can acknowledge it and tell you that watching you build something beautiful from what we destroyed, it showed me what real strength looks like. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman who'd stood next to my husband at my diagnosis, who'd helped him commit felonies, who'd been part of the worst period of my life. I don't forgive you, Susan, she nodded. I understand. But I appreciate you saying this. I appreciate you acknowledging the harm. That's more than David ever did. He hasn't acknowledged anything. He writes me letters from prison. Every one is about how I ruined his life, how the MS made me vindictive, how I should have let him go peacefully. Not one word of real accountability. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and do something useful. You're working at a pharmacy? Yes. Okay. Advocate for disabled patients. Notice when someone's being abused or exploited. Use what you learned, what you did to protect other people. That's how you make amends. Not with apologies, with action. She stared at me. You're giving me advice after what I did? I'm giving you a chance to be better. Take it or don't, but stop wasting my time with apologies if you're not going to do the work. She nodded slowly. Thank you. Really, I'll do better. She walked away and Tamika appeared at my side. Did Susan Chen just thank you for advice after helping your husband commit crimes against you? Apparently. Girl, you are too gracious. Not gracious, strategic. If she's going to work in healthcare, better she be someone who protects patients than harms them. That evening, Marcus and I had dinner at a soul food restaurant in the West End. He fed me bites of macaroni and cheese when my hands were too shaky to hold my fork. My MS symptoms were worse at night. You were incredible today, he said. I've watched you speak a dozen times and I still get chills. You're biased. You have to say that. I'm biased because you're amazing. Those two things can both be true. He wiped my mouth gently, kissed my forehead. How do you feel? Tired, proud, ready to be married to you and stop planning this wedding. He laughed. 3 more weeks. Then you're stuck with me forever. Forever sounds perfect. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Nia? It's Regina. I wanted to give you a heads up. David filed an appeal. Again. This was his 3rd appeal, all denied so far. Let him. He's not getting out early. That's not all. He's doing interviews from prison, talking about how you're an inspiration, and he's learned so much about disability rights. I laughed. He's trying to rehab his image. It's not working. Every article mentions what he did. The comments are brutal, but I wanted you to know. Thanks, Regina. I'm not worried. The truth is public record. After we hung up, Marcus asked, David? Trying to rewrite history. Again. Let him try. Everyone knows who you really are, who he really is. Nothing he says from a prison cell changes that. 3 weeks later, I married Marcus at a ceremony designed entirely around accessibility. Ramped entrance, wide aisles for wheelchairs, chairs for guests who needed to sit, sign language interpreters, braille programs. I rolled down the aisle in my chair, wearing a custom purple dress. Purple for MS awareness. My hands shook as I held my bouquet, but Marcus's hands were steady when he took mine. I vow to love you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not despite your disability, not because of it, but alongside it, as part of the complete, beautiful, powerful person you are. I vow, I said through happy tears, to love you with the same fierceness you've shown me, to never shrink myself, to never let anyone tell us we're too disabled to deserve everything. We deserve it all, and we're taking it. Everyone was crying. Mama, Tamika, my brothers, even Regina was wiping her eyes. 6 months after our wedding, I got a letter from David. Not from his lawyer, from him directly. Nia, I saw photos of your wedding. You looked happy, really happy. I want you to know I'm genuinely glad you found someone who treats you right. I also want you to know I finally understand what I did. I had a cellmate whose daughter has MS. Watching him support her, seeing his love for her, made me realize what I failed to give you. I was a coward. I was ashamed of myself and I took it out on you. I called you too ghetto because I hated being black in white corporate spaces. I called you too dramatic because I couldn't handle real emotion. I abandoned you because I was too weak to stay. You weren't too much. I wasn't enough. I see that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally see the truth. You were always enough. More than enough. I'm the one who was broken, not you. I hope you're happy. You deserve every bit of happiness. I read it twice, then showed it to Marcus. What do you think? He asked. I think it took him 4 years in prison to figure out what he should have known all along. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. About the woman I was when David first mocked me. Broken, scared, believing I was too much. And the woman I was now, powerful, married to a man who loved me completely, running an organization that changed lives, speaking truth to thousands. No, I said finally, I don't need to respond. He can sit with his realization. I'm busy living my life. I put the letter in a drawer and never looked at it again. Because David Harrison's redemption arc wasn't my story to worry about. My story was about a woman who was told she was too ghetto, too dramatic, too disabled to deserve dignity. And she proved that dignity was never about walking. It was about standing up, sitting up, rolling up for yourself. And I'd been doing that from a wheelchair better than David ever did on 2 feet. That was the real victory. Not that he was in prison, but that I was free.